seconds. They decide everything. One shot, one wound, and the race against death begins. In 1944, on the battlefields of Europe, medics had neither time nor chances. Europe, summer of 1944. Normandy is drowning in mud. Rain drums on helmets, mingling with blood and ash. The air is filled with the screams of the wounded, the roar of artillery, the smell of burning. Every day, the front grinds thousands of lives to dust. Every minute, someone dies who could have lived. World War II medics were not just doctors. They were soldiers in a war against time. But time always won. From the moment of injury to first aid, 3 hours pass. Sometimes 4. Sometimes 6. If the wounded were even pulled off the battlefield, a long journey awaited. Stretchers through craters, a jolting jeep on broken roads, or even a horse-drawn cart. Field hospitals were overflowing. Blood was scarce. Tools were rusty, primitive. Antibiotics were almost non-existent. The statistics are cold and merciless. 70% of those who died didn't perish on the battlefield, but on the way to the hospital. A shard in the leg, a bullet in the shoulder, a wound that today would be considered trivial was a death sentence back then. Soldiers bled out in the mud while medics, themselves under fire, tried to drag them to safety. World War II wasn't just tanks, planes, and loud victories. It was millions of lives cut short between the trench and the operating table. Imagine, a soldier, 19 years old, lies in a crater. A grenade fragment has torn through his thigh. Blood soaks his coat, his pulse weakens. Medics find him after an hour. They do what they can. Tourniquet, bandages, morphine. But the nearest hospital is 15 kilometers away. The roads are destroyed. Vehicles get stuck in the mud. By the time they reach it, his heart stops. Another grave. Another letter of condolence sent home. Such stories number in the millions. In Normandy, in the Ardennes, on the Eastern Front. Wherever battles raged, time was the medic's enemy. They fought not only wounds, but also distances, shortages of everything, from bandages to gasoline. Field hospitals were often just tents, where surgeons worked under the light of kerosene lamps, their patients' screams drowned out by the drone of planes. But what if things had been different? What if World War II medics had more than morphine and bandages? What if they had wings? What if machines capable of covering kilometers in minutes had appeared in the skies over Normandy? No one in 1944 could have imagined that salvation would come from the sky. No one knew that in 20 years, a technology would emerge that would change the very essence of medical evacuation. They would call it dust-off. Helicopters, machines that could have rewritten history. They weren't just transport. They were hope, time, life. But in 1944, they didn't exist. Medics fought with what they had: stretchers, jeeps, desperate resolve. And yet, every day, they lost. The war didn't wait. It ground people down, giving no chance for salvation. But what if they had had that chance? What if the black silhouettes of UH-60 Blackhawks had already been rising into the sky above the battlefield? 7 minutes. That's how long it takes to save a soldier's life in the hell of Normandy. In 1944, it was a dream. But what if dust-off helicopters had already been flying over the front lines back then? June 1944, Normandy, an airfield near Sainte-Mère-Église. Amid the roar of Spitfires and Mustangs, a black silhouette appears on the horizon. It's not a prototype Bell H-13, which won't exist for another decade. It's a UH-60 Black Hawk, a helicopter born not in the 1970s, but in the heart of World War II. Its fuselage, marked with red crosses, stands out against the gray sky. The UH-60 is a machine of salvation. On board are 6 stretchers, with straps for the wounded, defibrillators, oxygen masks, plasma bags, and morphine syringes. The SCR-300 radio in the cockpit picks up a signal from the front. Square 47, 3 wounded, critical. The pilot responds. Dust-off inbound, 7 minutes. The Black Hawk takes off. Speed, up to 280 km/h. It races over fields where artillery smoke drifts above craters. The helicopter lands 50 meters from the front line, under infantry cover. Medics in green jumpsuits leap out, dragging stretchers. Bullets whistle, but they work fast. The wounded are loaded in a minute. One soldier is unconscious. The onboard medic activates the defibrillator. A shock. The pulse returns. 20 kilometers to the mobile hospital are covered in 12 minutes. Surgeons are waiting, operating rooms ready. Wounded who would have bled out an hour ago are now under the scalpel. Plasma transfused during the flight stop's hemorrhages. Penicillin, rare in 1944, prevents infections. 1 flight, 6 saved. 5 flights a day, 30 people. A week, 200. A month, thousands. Survival rates for severe wounds jump from 30% to 75%. Shrapnel in the chest, fractures, blood loss, wounds that once meant death now offer a chance. Dust-off is more than technology. It's hope. Soldiers on the front line hear the thrum of rotor blades and know help is coming. This certainty changes their outlook on battle. Infantry holds out longer, knowing aid is near. Black Hawk crews become heroes. Pilots fly through gunfire, dodging tracer rounds. Onboard medics work in cramped quarters, bandaging and injecting. Every flight is a risk. Bullets pierce the fuselage, but dust-off doesn't stop. In the rear, hospitals start operating differently. Helicopters deliver the wounded faster than jeeps, allowing surgeons to operate sooner. Coordinates via SCR-300 are accurate to within tens of meters. The war remains brutal, but for the first time, medics have a tool to snatch lives from death. The UH-60 Black Hawk is more than a helicopter. It's time, now on the medic's side. But how will the war change when salvation becomes part of the strategy? War is not just weapons and soldiers. It's choices, to risk or retreat. In 1944, dust-off helicopters give commanders a new card to play. Salvation becomes part of the strategy. Normandy, autumn 1944. Operation Cobra tears through German lines near St. Lo. The Allies advance, but every step is paid in blood. Above the battlefield, UH-60 Black Hawks hum. Their General Electric T-700 engines provide speeds up to 280 km/h, delivering the wounded to hospitals in 12 minutes. The fuselage armor withstands machine gun fire, and SCR-300 radios pick up precise coordinates from the front. 1 flight saves 6 lives. Dust-off changes the war. Allied commanders rethink tactics. Risky operations were once delayed. Without rapid evacuation, losses would be catastrophic. Now, helicopters provide a chance. In Normandy, General Omar Bradley accelerates the advance through hedgerow country, knowing the wounded will be evacuated in minutes. In December 1944, during the German Ardennes offensive, dust-off saves the 101st Airborne Division in Bastogne. Helicopters land under fire, evacuating dozens of soldiers and delivering medical supplies to the encircled city. In a single day, crews save 120 people, giving the division a chance to hold its ground. The effect is even more striking on other theaters of war. In North Africa, UH-60s soar over the desert, evacuating tank crews from knocked-out Shermans at El Alamein. Sand and heat are no longer a death sentence. The wounded are delivered to Cairo in half an hour. On the Pacific, dust-off lands on the beaches of Guadalcanal, picking up Marines from landing craft under Japanese fire. In Italy, Where the mountains of Monte Cassino blocked even medical trucks, helicopters hover above cliffs, lowering cables. Their 600-kilometer range allows them to deliver the wounded straight to Naples without refueling. The logistics of war are transformed. Mobile hospitals move closer to the front, 10 kilometers instead of 30. Surgeons operate on patients whose wounds haven't yet been complicated by hours of blood loss. Plasma and penicillin, delivered on board, save from shock and infections. Doctors in Normandy report, of 200 wounded brought by dust-off in a day, 180 survive. Without helicopters, half would have been lost. Dust-off crews become legends. Pilots like Lieutenant John Kelly fly through anti-aircraft fire, dodging tracers. His Black Hawk takes 14 hits in a month, but saves 180 lives in the Ardennes. Onboard medics bandage and inject in cramped conditions amid engine vibrations. They're called Angels of the Front. Commanders integrate dust-off into strategy. General George Patton in Africa uses helicopters to support tank raids, knowing crews of destroyed tanks won't be left in the desert. In the Pacific, Admiral Chester Nimitz coordinates landings on Iwo Jima, relying on beach evacuations. General Dwight Eisenhower later writes, "Dust-off gave us the ability to advance without fear of losing men." The war changes. Salvation becomes not just a humane act, but a strategic advantage. Operations once deemed suicidal are now feasible. Dust-off allows the Allies to take risks, knowing every life has a chance. But the enemy isn't blind. German observers spot the black silhouettes with red crosses. The Luftwaffe prepares a response, and the war in the skies grows even more dangerous. War tolerates no one-sided victories. When the Allies gained dust-off, salvation became their weapon. But the enemy isn't blind. The skies above the front become a new battleground. Autumn 1944. Normandy, the Ardennes, Italy. UH-60, Black Hawks with red crosses on their sides, have become salvation for thousands of soldiers. Their hum is a sign of hope for the Allies. But for the Germans, these helicopters are a threat. Every saved soldier is a fighter who will return to the front. The Luftwaffe is ordered to stop the flying crosses, as German pilots nickname dust-off. The Germans adapt quickly. Luftwaffe Commander Hermann Göring forms Special Messerschmitt, Bf 109 squadrons to hunt helicopters. Their mission? Intercept Black Hawks at low altitudes, where they're most vulnerable. Flak 88 anti-aircraft guns are deployed to the front, their 80mm shells tearing through the sky, targeting the black silhouettes. In the Ardennes, where forests conceal German positions, anti-aircraft guns are camouflaged among trees to strike without warning. Dust-off losses mount. 1 in 10 flights doesn't return. In November 1944, Lieutenant John Kelly's crew, which saved 180 lives in Bastogne, is hit by Flak 88 fire. The helicopter crashes in the forest. No one survives. In a month, the Allies lose 12 Black Hawks, but evacuations don't stop. Every downed helicopter is replaced, and crews keep flying, knowing soldiers' lives are at stake. German tactics shift. Before, their targets were tanks, planes, fortifications. Now, it's medics. German snipers are ordered to aim at battlefield medics to slow evacuations. On the Eastern Front, near Kursk, German units mine areas where dust-off frequently lands, hoping to destroy helicopters. In Italy, at Monte Cassino, the Luftwaffe drops leaflets threatening to shoot down any helicopter with a red cross. This hunt poses a question for the Allies: how to protect dust-off. The UH-60's armored fuselage withstands machine guns, but not anti-aircraft shells. Pilots begin flying at ultra-low altitudes, using hills and forests for cover. In Normandy, crews vary routes to avoid known Flak 88 positions, but the risk remains. One pilot, Captain Williams, later recalls, Every flight was like Russian roulette. You knew you might not come back, but you also knew, without you, 6 others wouldn't either. The war faces a moral dilemma for the first time. A German officer, captured near Falaise, says during interrogation, "You call yourselves soldiers. We shoot at those who shoot back. But you're dust-off, they don't fight. Why should we spare them?" His words echo in Allied headquarters. The red crosses on the helicopters are a symbol of humanity. But in war, humanity becomes a target. Dust-off forces both sides to reflect. Are there limits in battle? By attacking helicopters, the Germans violate the unwritten rules of war. But the Allies, using Black Hawks, shift the balance of power, saving soldiers who will return to fight. The war grows more complex. German commanders like Field Marshal Rommel realize, if Dust-off isn't stopped, the Allies will advance faster, losing less. In response, they intensify Luftwaffe night patrols to intercept helicopters in the dark. But Dust-off's impact is irreversible. Over the autumn of 1944, helicopters save 15,000 soldiers in Europe. In the Pacific, they evacuate 4,000 Marines from the islands. In Africa, 2,000 tank crews. These numbers change the course of the war. Allied operations accelerate because losses no longer paralyze. Dust-off medics become targets, but their mission doesn't waver. Pilots and medics, knowing each flight could be their last, keep flying. Their motto, born in this fictional 1944, is simple: no one left behind. The war in the skies grows fiercer. The Germans intensify attacks, but Dust-off keeps saving. This choice, to fly through fire for lives, leaves a mark that changes not only World War II, but all wars after it. The war ends, but its lessons endure. In 1945, Dust-off doesn't just save lives, it redefines the understanding of war. What if salvation became more important than destruction? Spring 1945. Europe lies in smoking ruins, but the Allies advance. Berlin looms on the horizon. Above fields where battles recently raged, UH-60 Black Hawks with red crosses fly. These helicopters, appearing in our fictional 1944, saved tens of thousands of lives. In Normandy, 20,000 soldiers, who would otherwise be listed as casualties. In the Pacific, 8,000 Marines evacuated from islands. In Africa, 5,000 tank crews pulled from the desert's inferno. Dust-off changed World War II. Allied operations sped up because losses were no longer a death sentence. In the Ardennes, where the Germans tried to turn the tide, helicopters saved the 101st Airborne Division, giving it the strength to hold Bastogne. In Italy, at Monte Cassino, they delivered the wounded from mountains where medics couldn't pass before. These saved lives aren't just numbers. They're soldiers who returned home, fathers who saw their children, sons who survived the war. But Dust-off's impact extends beyond 1945. If helicopters had appeared in 1944, they would have laid the foundation for a new era of military medicine. The Korean War of the 1950s would have been a different conflict. Instead of slow medical trucks, Black Hawks would have evacuated the wounded from Pusan's hills. Vietnam in the 1960s, where real UH-1 Huey helicopters began the medevac era, would have had the technology 20 years earlier. By the 2000s, in Iraq and Afghanistan, evacuation systems inspired by Dust-off would have saved even more lives, building on World War II experience. Dust-off's technologies would have spread to peacetime. Civilian rescue services, from mountain disasters to road accidents, would have adopted the UH-60 model: rapid evacuation, treatment in flight, precise coordination. Hospitals worldwide would have restructured logistics, focusing on the speed Dust-off demonstrated. Penicillin and plasma, standard on board, would have accelerated the development of antibiotics and transfusion medicine. But the greatest legacy isn't technology, it's philosophy. Dust-off would have changed attitudes toward war. In 1944, losses were seen as inevitable. Soldiers went into battle knowing a wound could be the end. Helicopters made salvation real. Commanders like Dwight Eisenhower would have begun to see every soldier not just as a fighter, but as a person who could be saved. This idea, that every life is worth saving, would have become a new principle. Dust-off medics, risking themselves under fire, became symbols. Their motto, "No one left behind," would inspire generations. In Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, their successors, pilots and medics, would carry the same emblem, the Red Cross, the mark of those who brave fire for others. If dust-off had appeared in 1944, the war might have ended sooner. Not because of new weapons, but because of the belief that every soldier had a chance. Allied operations, accelerated by salvation, could have shortened the war by months. Berlin might have fallen not in May, but perhaps in March 1945. Fewer families would have received letters of condolence. Fewer graves would have remained nameless. But Dust-Off's legacy isn't just saved lives or hastened victories. It's the question it posed to the world. What does it mean to be human in war? The Germans, attacking helicopters, called them targets. The Allies, defending them, saw hope. This conflict, between destruction and salvation, lives on in every conflict after 1945. Dust-Off showed that war isn't just death. It's a choice, to destroy or to save. And this choice, born in the skies over Normandy, would have changed history. Medics flying through fire proved, even in the hell of war, there is room for humanity.